Today, we're unpacking a pretty intense divine warning. It makes some staggering claims, not just about our souls, but about the future of whole countries. We're talking about a prophecy that connects a global spiritual crisis directly to the threat of a new world war. And it gives humanity a choice that, well, the consequences are said to be world-altering.
So the whole thing really boils down to this one big question. What if all the chaos we see out there, all the political tension and conflict, what if it's all just a symptom of something much, much deeper? A spiritual crisis. That's the lens we're going to be using to look at everything today.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at this diagnosis of a world in total chaos. Then, we'll dive into a really sharp critique of modern religion. After that, we'll get into specific warnings for nations like Iran and China, before we finally uncover the so-called divine path for survival and the final, stark choice that's presented to every single one of us.
Okay, first up, a world on the brink. The core idea here is that our planet isn't just dealing with a bit of political instability. No, the claim is we're on the edge of a full-blown catastrophe, and it's all being driven by what the speaker sees as a complete breakdown in leadership around the globe.
So the basic take is that our global systems are just failing. The friction we're all feeling isn't just a simple disagreement between countries. It's being framed as this dangerous slide into a massive war. And according to the speaker, this isn't just some fringe possibility, it's the likely outcome if we stay on this path.
And here's where we get to the supposed root of the problem. It's not about economics, it's not just politics. The ultimate issue, according to this message, is a kind of spiritual deafness. The idea is that our leaders have completely lost their connection to any divine guidance, and that's what makes them incapable of steering us out of this crisis.
And this idea of being spiritually disconnected, it doesn't just stop with politicians. It leads straight into a powerful critique of organized religion itself. The argument is that many of the world's biggest faiths have just lost their way, straying so far from what they were originally about.
This brings us to a key concept the speaker calls formalized religion. The idea here is that many religions have become these hollow shells. They have the buildings, the rituals, the traditions, but they've lost that essential living spirit, the actual soul of their founder's original message. This chart just lays it out so clearly. On the left, you've got the original divine teachings, things focused on peace, on growing as an individual, on inner faith. But then you look to the right, and you see what the speaker calls modern fundamentalism, which they say has twisted those beautiful ideals into conflict, control, and a bunch of rigid external rules.
Then the speaker makes a really specific and urgent call for reform, aimed right at Islam. Now, it's important to get this right. The message isn't a rejection of the entire faith. It's a warning that its fundamentalist interpretation is seen as a corruption, one that's leading people down a really destructive path. That, the speaker insists, has to be changed from the inside.
Okay, so we've covered the spiritual side. Now the message pivots, and it gets very geopolitical. The speaker gives some incredibly direct warnings to two major nations, basically telling them that the choices they make right now are at a critical crossroads that will decide their entire destiny. The first warning goes out to Iran, and it's presented as this incredibly high-stakes choice between two totally different futures. One path, they say, leads to ruin, and the other to a kind of rebirth. And here is that warning, and wow, it is blunt. The speaker is urging Iran to stop his nuclear program, period. The claim is that chasing after these weapons will lead directly to the nation's destruction, drawing a pretty chilling parallel to what happened in Iraq.
So, here are the two options laid out on the table. Path number one, cozy up to China, rely on them for protection and to buy your oil. The speaker calls this the path to ruin. Path number two is a complete 180. Ditch the nuclear program, embrace democracy, and build a modern economy. This, the message claims, is the only way for the nation to actually survive.
And this warning about Iran's potential ally blows up into a much bigger critique of China's influence on the world stage. The way it's framed, China's investments aren't real partnerships. They're more like a form of debt-trap colonialism. The warning to other nations is loud and clear. Don't sell your soul, your sovereignty, for cash. Okay, so after all of that doom and gloom, you're probably asking, what's the solution? Well, the message shifts gears here, moving from diagnosing the problem to prescribing the cure. And it's a vision for a total spiritual and social reboot for the entire planet.
Now, right at the center of this whole proposed solution is a figure named Cantare.
According to this worldview, El Cantare isn't just another god on the list, it's presented as the supreme god of Earth, the ultimate consciousness that's above all others, and will basically act as the final judge of where humanity goes from here. So, this new vision for the future is really built on a few key ideas. On the spiritual side, it's all about uniting under one God. Politically, it's all in on freedom and democracy. And economically, it's about creating a world where if you work hard, you can get ahead. It's basically a blueprint for a whole new type of global society.
So, the bottom line is that true unity can only happen through this new, universal truth. The speaker is claiming that if humanity just embraces these divine words, we can finally get over all our divisions and kick off a new age of harmony, cooperation, and real progress for everyone.
And that brings us to the very end of the message. And let me tell you, it's not some friendly suggestion. It is presented as a divine ultimatum, a final, unavoidable choice for the entire world. This might be the single most dramatic claim in the whole message. The consequence for ignoring this divine guidance is, well, a global catastrophe that could wipe out half of all people on Earth.
And just to make sure that sinks in, the prophecy gives a timeline. It claims this catastrophic population drop could happen within the next decade, and it would be a direct result of humanity just failing to make the right choice.
And so we end up right back where we started, with a choice. The message puts two futures in front of us. One path could lead to spiritual unity and global peace. The other leads to a pretty dire fate of war and destruction. So the question that just hangs in the air is, which path is humanity going to choose?